grass was hot beneath my knees, and for once the sweet scent of my roses did nothing to comfort me. Instead, I only sobbed. There was no putting my heart together, no hope that one day my soul would know rest. Tomorrow I would give myself to Devon. The only hope for the curse to lift had abandoned me. "Why are you crying, Kieran?" I stopped, my body shaking as I turned to see Lee standing behind me. He set the guitar case down and knelt beside me, a hand out, hovering at my shoulder, afraid to touch me. I was afraid for him to touch me too. What if his fingers passed through an incorporeal body, like the ghosts of human horror stories? It would be more than I could stand. "Devon told me you wouldn't return," I whispered. "He told me that he was going to kill you if you came back." "What Devon doesn't know isn't going to hurt me," he said. After a moment's hesitation, he tentatively grazed his hand against my shoulder. My breath paused as I felt the pressure of his hand against the silk of my prom dress. He smiled and reached a hand out. I took it and he helped me stand. "I'll come after midnight," he whispered, "and I'll stay with you until dawn." His words made me smile, though I still wept inside. Why did it hurt so much to find my Savior? Because I knew one day I would ask him to release me. One day I would leave him forever. I wonder if he knew, but I didn't have the courage to tell him. Instead, I promised myself that I would make it up to him. I would suffer for days or months if he needed me to, if only to see him each night. He smiled, and for a moment I wished I could return the smile for him. But I was glad he couldn't see my face, either the scarred, burned mask beneath or the one that represented the person that deserved her chains. In my mind, I was different. Anything I would show him now would be a lie. Only my mask could tell him the truth. The last few months passed quickly for Lee, scarcely real. He watched weeks melt away, and his first break from school started. Soon his days consisted of the same thing. He would go to sleep until night fell. Each time he slept, he would dream of what Kieran was doing, of what she was singing or reading. When he woke at sunset, he would eat and prepare to sneak out to meet Kieran. Together they watched the summer fade and autumn come. Kieran was everything. Witty, intelligent, kind. There was something about her. They could spend hours talking about nothing and not be bored. They would spend hours singing, teaching each other songs, and when they tired of that, she would read to him. Too bad he was going to end it. It broke his heart in ways that were unimaginable. But he would release her tonight. She didn't think he knew what his role was in the curse, but he did. Like everything that he knew about her, he dreamt it. Dreamt her wishing that he'd let her go. It was only his selfishness that kept her suffering each night. But it was time that he did what was right for her. He could see the sadness in her ethereal green eyes, the suffering she took on to be with him. It wasn't right, like a butterfly in an empty glass jar. Lee left his home before the sun fell, walking the familiar path that brought him to her home, the grand Victorian lady that housed Kieran. He stepped through the threshold, his eyes searching the darkened corners. When he saw her, he asked the same thing he asked every night. "Sing for me, Kieran?" "Lee, what are you doing here so early?" Lee smiled at her breathless voice. It was soft, a dove's coo, with a heavy southern accent. She was at the corner of the living room, barely resting out of the sunlight. Her mask was illuminated by the candle that she read by, silver-painted porcelain. "I don't want you to suffer tonight," he said. Her head cocked to the side, showing her confusion. In the time that he knew her, he'd learned how to read her body language instead of facial expressions. "I don't understand. How do I lift the curse, Kieran?" She leaned back, and he knew she was surprised. "You knew? I'm sorry I didn't ask sooner." For a moment Kieran didn't say anything before she whispered, "I don't want to leave you." Lee swallowed, his throat suddenly sticky. He made himself not think about what was going to happen, how he'd lose the only thing that made him happy since moving here. "Please, Kieran?" She stood and took the candle with her to where he stood in the failing sun's light. For a moment she was silent, her green eyes studying him intently. "Remove my mask," she said finally, "for you can't do it until midnight. It has to be at the same time the curse was cast. Can't make it easy on me, can you?" "What about this is easy?" she whispered, and he caught the sad tone in her voice. Tears dripped through the porcelain, and he wiped them away, kissing the cold porcelain cheek.